Well, this is a strange little film, co-written by Andrew Kevin Walker, which in itself is a strange connection when you consider that he's best known for writing Seven. Also writing is Justin Lader and director Charlie McDowell, who also brought us the 2017 Netflix film The Discovery and 2014's The One I Love. I haven't seen either of those, although The One I Love is described as a comedy thriller, which kind of also describes Windfall. This was acquired by Netflix for a considerable amount of money last year, and it was a lockdown project, both in conception and shooting and production. So after the opening, in which we see the exterior of a beautiful, secluded house, you get these big Hitchcockian titles, Windfall, as if you're in any doubt the kind of film and the kind of references that you're going to get as it goes on. That clears it up for you. I mean, we get a bit of a subversion on what you might expect the setup to be. So the very basic premise is that a billionaire tech CEO and his wife arrive at their holiday home to find that it's being robbed by Jason Segel, or at least Jason Segel's character. We that would be great if it actually was just Jason Segel.
That's what I'm laughing at right now. The thought of it is actually Jason Segel who's not acting.
Now that would be an interesting movie. But we meet the Jason Segel character first, not the people who are getting robbed, but the robber, the Segel character first, as he skulks around the house without any real urgency, and then Jesse Plemons and Lily Collins arrive as the husband and wife. Plemons' character, completely horrible. I mean, he's summed up by this awful outburst about how hard it is being a rich white man. I mean, she's more enigmatic. She's got this kind of air of sadness about her. She looks bored even when her house has been invaded. She doesn't seem a whole lot more enamoured with her husband than we are. Something's going on under the surface. But anyway, what now in terms of the robbery? So the robber, Segel's character, demands money from the couple, but then they both suggest that he needs more than what he initially asked for in order to make himself disappear and to live a comfortable life. The CEO phones up his personal assistant, and it turns out that the cash can't arrive until the next day, forcing the three characters into their own little, very odd lockdown. The first thing that struck me about Windfall is how just strange the tone is. I mean, when you describe the setup, you could be getting a full-on suspenseful popcorn thriller, but it's very low on suspense. I mean, you get a fair bit of conversation with a point instead. I mean, Malcolm and Marie kind of came to mind, that film, the Sam Levinson film from another kind of lockdowny project. But that was a terrible film. This is so much better than that. But there was elements of that came to mind. So you get plenty of time to try and figure out this CEO character, this wife character, those characters in particular. So that actually makes the initial introduction of the robber. I mean, the Segel character is just credited as nobody. CEO character is just credited as CEO, and the wife character is just credited as wife. But the CEO and wife character are definitely the more important thing. So the fact that we get introduced to Segel's character first is kind of puzzling. One of the things that does work in the film is the way that the role shifts. So at first, the robber seems like he might actually be dangerous, and you kind of do feel a little bit sorry for both of the victims. I mean, they're getting robbed after all by a guy who's threatening them. But then both of them, and especially the Plemons character, they kind of become not the victims. I mean, they kind of manage to oppress the invader. They make him feel small. They make him feel like he's below them on the social scale, whether deliberately or not. And then something else creeps in, that this oppression almost becomes, you almost don't notice it happening, but it kind of becomes a gender-based thing. I mean, it kind of shifts from them versus him to something more subjective. That definitely a shift happens at a certain point in the film. There's this idea that selling people's data as the head of a tech company, I mean, the guy is clearly Zuckerberg in all but name. The idea that selling people's data isn't any better than literally stealing from people, that's not that subtle. What is subtle in the film is that the way it kind of almost unnoticeably shifts to take on this genuinely interesting topic of how male entitlement, toxic masculinity exists right up and down the scale, right from the CEOs of the world to the quote-unquote nobodies of the world, and how no amount of money or lack of it changes that. Having said that, I think there are plenty of ways the film doesn't work. I mean, I did find the pacing to be problematic. I mean, we get to this point, this bonfire scene, where I was just begging for something to happen, like the bonfire to blow up, or just anything to make it exciting. And admittedly, eventually that does happen. And at the end, there is a double whammy of kind of, I mean, you we'll get to your thoughts in a bit. You thought it was quite predictable. There's a kind of gut punch at the end, a double gut punch where I went, whoa, really? That's where we're at? I genuinely didn't see that coming. But I think it does feel like a chore of a watch for a long period of the film, especially when it is nominally a thriller. There are these weird attempts at humour as well. At times I wasn't sure if I was meant to be laughing. At one point I laughed, and then I realised I probably shouldn't have been, and then at other times I wished it would just stop trying to be funny. I mean, the tone is so odd. I mean, I think some of that is deliberate, at least in the way no one seems to like they're really being robbed. No one seems to be like they're really being kept hostage. No one seems to be like they're doing the robbing or the hostage taking. I mean, I think that's only really clear once all the cards are played, though. I think you only really get a sense of that right at the end. Until then, I was just like, this is so weird. Like, what is this? Aside from that, the performances are good. You would expect that of a cast of this caliber. I actually think Jason Segel is probably the outstanding one, even when you consider he's probably the least A-list of all three. And how you consider the character is definitely, he's given no backstory very deliberately, and he's the least important of the three characters, I think. I wasn't sure about the score by Danny Bensi and Sonder Jurians at first. It's very, very active score, very front and centre. But I actually think I liked it overall because when things are getting a bit boring at times, it makes it a little bit more interesting. It's pretty much a three-hander. There's one very, very secondary character comes in briefly, but it's basically a three-hander, and it does feel like it could be a stage play. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that as well, considering your involvement in theatre writing and stuff. I did wonder if it'd be less odd on stage as well. I wondered if that was maybe a reason for why it felt so odd. I think on stage there would be less sense that more action and suspense would be needed. It's very strange. This is such a strange. I can't say that I enjoyed it hugely while I was watching it, but I kind of have enjoyed thinking about it afterwards. I did enjoy the sheer abrupt shock, at least to me, of the ending. Although even that feels like it might work better on stage. And think about different definitions of Windfall as well. I wish I'd actually loaded them up to hand. Basically, one of them is one of them that's actually been in the news recently, well, the stuff that money in the world, not the issues with money in the world just now, is windfall profits. So obviously that's referencing the CEO and all the money he's made and stuff. But there's another kind of definition to it that's like an unexpected gain, a kind of piece of a stroke of good luck, a kind of just something that you didn't, a kind of unexpected silver lining. And I think there is something in that as it pertains to understanding what the film's trying to do.